The ocean has always been home to giants, but none are quite as enigmatic or awe-inspiring as the ichthyosaurs. For decades, these titans of the deep remain shrouded in mystery, their secrets locked away in stone. But today, a new era of discovery is unfolding, based on recent breakthroughs published in the journal Nature. We are finally beginning to understand how these massive marine reptiles dominated the ancient oceans for over 150 million. Yes, the story of the ichthyosaur begins long before the word dinosaur was even a part of the human vocabulary. In the early 19th century, along the rugged southwest coast of England, a strange, skeletal form emerged from the cliffs. A 13-year-old girl named Mary Anning, along with her brother, discovered this miraculous creature. In 1814, a high price of £23 was paid for the fossil, a fortune at the time. This discovery inspired the first scientific paper dedicated to ichthyosaurs, written by the surgeon Everett Home. At first, the scientific community was baffled. Home mistakenly identified the creature as a fish, perhaps related to sharks or rays. However, naturalists soon realized they were looking at something far more complex. This was a reptile that had returned to the sea. The pioneers of natural history were stunned. Georges Cuvier, often called the father of zoology, described them as unbelievable. He used the ichthyosaur as primary evidence for his theory of catastrophism, the idea that Earth had been shaped by sudden, massive extinction events. Meanwhile, the geologist Charles Lyell proposed a different, almost haunting idea. He believed that if Earth's climate cycles ever returned to a specific favorable stage, the ichthyosaurs might one day reappear from the depths. But as the 19th century progressed, the discovery of massive land-dwelling animals with rows of terrifying teeth shifted the world's attention. The term dinosaur was coined, and almost overnight, the public and the scientific community became obsessed with the giants of the land. The ichthyosaurs were pushed off their throne of glory. For decades, their fossils piled up in museum basements and studied and overlooked. Their life histories left in a state of academic limbo. Fortunately, after nearly a century of neglect, a new generation of researchers has returned to these marine predators. We now know that during the age of dinosaurs, it was the ichthyosaurs that ruled the waves. Their reign lasted for an incredible 150 million years. In just the last 2 decades, our knowledge has exploded. Between 1800 and the year 2000, researchers identified about 80 species. But in only the last 17 years, an additional 30 species have been discovered. This renaissance in paleontology is finally answering the big questions. Where did they come from? How did they evolve? And how did they manage to conquer the global ocean so rapidly? The diversity of ichthyosaurs far exceeds our previous imagination. They were not just fish lizards. Early forms moved through the water with powerful tails, patrolling the open sea like modern-day whales. Some species grew to sizes that rival the modern blue whale, making them the largest predators of the Triassic period. The transition from a land-dwelling reptile to a fully aquatic marine monster required a radical anatomical overhaul. Their limbs shrank and transformed into powerful flippers. They evolved the ability to hold their breath for extraordinary periods, with some species staying submerged for over 20 minutes. Perhaps most striking were their eyes. Some ichthyosaurs evolved eyes larger than a soccer ball, the largest eyes ever known in the animal kingdom, specifically designed to gather the faint flickers of light in the pitch-black world of the deep trenches. Scientists believe these dramatic changes were triggered by the Great Dying at the end of the Permian period, a mass extinction that wiped out nearly 80% of all marine species. For years, the fossil record was silent on how this transition happened. But recently, A missing link was discovered in a limestone quarry in China. This strange creature, named Cardrinchus, had a head only the size of an orange, but its body was protected by thickened bone plates. Living roughly 248 million years ago, just for a million years after the Great Dying, it represents the dawn of the ichthyosaur lineage. Nearby, researchers found Sclerocormus, a short-snouted relative that moved like a sea turtle, using oversized flippers to perhaps even crawl onto the shore. These fossils suggest that the ancestors of the ichthyosaur originated in what is now eastern China. At that time, the region was a lush, tropical coastline. The abundance of seafood near the shore likely attracted land reptiles, who eventually ventured deeper into the water. This phase of evolution was heavy and slow. Early ancestors were likely bottom dwellers, moving through the shallows before their descendants eventually mastered the open ocean. Once they reached the deep sea, the true ichthyosaurs evolved rapidly. By the early Triassic, they had already occupied every corner of the marine environment. Consider the thalatorchan, or the lizard-eating sovereign of the sea. This predator was the size of a killer whale and possessed serrated teeth designed for one purpose: hunting other marine reptiles. It appeared only 8 million years after the mass extinction, proving that the ocean's apex predators returned with a vengeance much faster than we ever realized. Even in the frigid Arctic Circle, on the island of Spitsbergen, researchers have chiseled through the permafrost to find massive ichthyosaur remains. These discoveries prove that as soon as these reptiles hit the water, they grew to monstrous proportions. However, after this initial burst of evolutionary success, the ichthyosaurs faced a long and difficult road. For a long time, the traditional scientific narrative was that ichthyosaurs lost their diversity during the Jurassic period and struggled to survive into the Cretaceous. It was believed that only a few similar-looking species managed to limp across the boundary before finally going extinct, while the dinosaurs continued to flourish for another 30 million years. It was thought that they simply couldn't compete with rising new predators like sharks. But recent research has shattered the story. A paleontologist named Valentin Fischer spent years not in the field, but in the quiet, dusty halls of museums. He studied hundreds of specimens that had been ignored for over a century. His work revealed a Cretaceous ichthyosaur revolution. He discovered at least 9 new species from this period, proving that ichthyosaurs were just as diverse in the early Cretaceous as they had been in the Jurassic. Their body shapes and diets were far more varied than we ever imagined. So, why did such a successful group of animals finally disappear? Fisher's analysis suggests a double blow. About 100 million years ago, a massive wave of extinction began, followed by the disappearance of the remaining survivors a few million years later. The primary suspect is climate change. By mapping extinction rates against environmental data, Fisher noticed a direct correlation. The more the temperature fluctuated, the more ichthyosaur species vanished. The mid-Cretaceous was a period of intense environmental stress. Sea levels were high, and oxygen levels in the ocean were dangerously low. Many other marine groups, such as the ammonites, also began to decline during this time. The ichthyosaurs were likely victims of a global shift in the oceanic ecosystem. While the debate over their final days continues, one thing is certain: they did not go quietly into the night. Today, scientists are using advanced technology to date the sediments containing ichthyosaur remains with pinpoint accuracy. We are tracing their history from land to sea, through golden ages and mass extinctions, with more precision than ever before. The ichthyosaur is no longer just a forgotten fossil in a museum basement. It is a testament to the resilience of life and the terrifying beauty of the ancient deep. They were the first true kings of the ocean. and their legacy continues to haunt the waters of our imagination.